Okay, everybody, welcome to an episode of RockerMike and Rock Presents. And today we have a special guest, very special guest, Mr. Danny Garcia, film director. He's done some great documentaries on some incredible musicians and other people. Danny, how you doing today? All right?
Hey, I'm good. Thank you for
All right,
having
I'm
me on the
glad you're
show,
here, man. Finally, we're getting this done, right? We had some
Yeah,
but we're good now.
yes, all good.
Yeah. So how is Brazil? You're down in Brazil, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've been here for the last 6 months, staying away from the big cities and stuff.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah, I don't blame you, man. I wish we could do that. We're right in the middle of it.
How are they dealing with the cobra over there?
How is it? How is everybody dealing with the coronavirus down there in Brazil?
yeah, well, it's getting out of hand, man. Kind of like
I
in the
heard that.
States.
Wow.
Same sort of situation, man.
Yeah.
So let me ask you. So when do you come back to the United States? Are they going to make you shelter in place?
Well, I'm originally from Barcelona, Spain. Actually, I have to go back to Barcelona, Spain.
Oh, you're going back to Barcelona. All right. So you're going back. Do you got a shelter in place where you go back over there then?
I don't know. I mean, people are doing quarantine and stuff over there.
Okay.
But I mean, yeah, there's like new cases and all that stuff.
But they're not as bad as everything else. They actually do pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy, man. We're living fucking crazy times
now. I know.
2020, what a shit year.
Yeah, it's been a terrible year. Wow. All right, so Dan, I want to talk about your movies a little bit, and I got to say, I've been a fan of yours since I saw the Looking for Johnny Thunders movie.
Oh, that was a great documentary.
Yeah, that came out in 2014. What I love about that film is you really got to the the real crux of Johnny Thunders, who he was a little bit, and his family, his friends, and he's I've seen him a couple of times live back in the day, and you just knew that despite all the drugs and everything like that he was a pretty decent guy. And people that I knew that knew him all said that, but the way you show it in the documentary, it's really very sad. It's a sad movie to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, these documentaries, about this sort of figures, I mean, they tend to be sad.
That's true. That's true. What made you decide to do a documentary on Johnny?
Well, I was a huge fan of the Thunders when I was like 16, 17.
Yeah.
And thanks to Nina Antonia's book, I sort of knew his, story inside out. I had all the records, so I was very familiar with all the material he put out throughout his life. So it was a bit of a no-brainer, really. I finished the documentary on the Clash. I was looking for another subject. I spoke to Sammy Yaffa and Nasty Suicide about doing something on Planet Rocks, but then nothing came out of it.
Yeah.
And I just thought Johnny was the obvious thing to do for me. And once I spoke to Jungle Records and they were on board, it sort of went rolling from there.
Sure. And Jungle Records still has his back catalog out there. They come out with a lot of stuff all the time. I think Nina Antonia was probably a big help to you, right?
A lot of people, Nina, Stevie Klassen, Philistine.
Yes,
a lot of people did help us out.
And I've noticed that you've used some of the same people in different documentaries, at least for the New York scene.
Because when I was doing the Thunders documentary, I started interviewing people about Sid and Nancy, and so that was the same people basically that were interacting with Thunders and with Sid. a lot of the same.
Everybody was in the same scene.
Mhm.
Right.
So that is why, basically. Also,
Yeah.
I like to give props to those people, from that scene.
Yeah. Very.
People like Lee Black.
One thing I got to talk
etc.
to you about. One thing I got to talk to you about is the new Brian Jones. Okay, now the Rolling Stone Life and Death of Brian Jones. That's your most recent documentary, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. It was also came out last year, and that was the 50th anniversary of Brian dying.
Mhm.
When you were putting that together, did you have any problems with the Rolling Stones at all?
No, not really. Not
Because
really.
they've always been very reluctant to talk about it,
Yeah, I mean, the Stones, they're not interested in Brian. They haven't been for the last 50 years or more. They don't own their music from the 60s. Alan Klein's company, APCO, owns the music, and
That's true.
APCO were not interested in our story, our documentary. So that is why we didn't get any Rolling Stones music, really, because
I was going to
APCO
ask you about that, but I did
was
notice
not
that you got Greg Prevost to do a song, right, from the Chesterfield Kings.
Oh, Greg gave us a couple of tracks. Then we have people like John Perry, who actually made a track for the film.
Yeah.
Dick Taylor
Right.
from the States and the Pretty Things made a couple of tracks for
Right.
the movie. And other artists, gave us great stuff.
Right, and you spoke to I believe you spoke to the late Phil May as well from the Pretty Things in that documentary.
Yeah, Phil and Dick Taylor both appear in the documentary.
Yeah.
Yeah, Phil was great, man. Phil was funny and very real.
Yeah.
He came to the premiere in London in last December.
Wow, that was probably only a few weeks before he died, right? Or maybe a couple months before he died. Yeah.
Couple months, yeah.
That was kind of a shock when that happened. I was very surprised to hear that.
We've already lost a couple of people we interviewed for that documentary. Phil and what's his name? This Terry O'Neill, the photographer.
Oh,
also
really?
died
Wow.
like a year.
Oh, wow. That I didn't know. Wow. Okay. Now, what's great about this documentary on Brian Jones is it goes into the controversy of his death. Okay, and I think you make a pretty good case that he was probably murdered. Whether accidentally or on purpose, we don't know. But what struck me so much is that he was found in the bottom of the pool, drowned by his girlfriend. And when they did the autopsy, they found no chlorinated water in his lungs, right?
Mm-hmm.
That means he didn't die in the pool. So what do you think happened to him? What do you think it was?
Well, I think what Scott Jones tells in the film is probably, the closest to what really happened to Brian, in the stories that he had a series of fights with the main builder, Frank Thorogood. On July the 2nd, 1969. And basically that day, Thorogood and his crew had been fired.
Yes.
So they stuck around and had a little party, just, a drinking session. And apparently throughout that day, Frank and Brian were fighting, I guess about the money.
Right.
And the fight got out of hand, basically. And, I don't want to give a lot of, spoilers for your viewers and your...
Yeah.
But apparently there was a trough in the garden. And that might have something to do with the fact that there was no chlorinated water in his lungs.
Right. He might have been drowned in that and thrown in the pool, possibly. But, everybody got to watch the documentary. You'll see how it goes.
It's a great documentary.
Yeah,
fantastic,
I was really, really moved by it. Now, one other film that you did was about Sid Vicious and Nancy Spungen. called Sad Vacation.
Oh, that's a
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. And this is, living in New York City, and I was, always involved with the punk scene on the Lower East Side. I was too young to go through what happened, but I always heard about it years later. Even today, people still talk about that murder. It's such an infamous thing. One thing that I really, really liked about your documentary was you dealt with it very objectively. Most documentaries really kind of say that he did it. Okay. Yours was kind of like up in the air whether he did it or not. And you also had an angle that I really liked because I forget the guy's name. The guy you interviewed that was on the steps of the Chelsea. He was sitting down, talking.
Victor,
I forget his name
Victor
off the top of my head.
Victor Colicchio.
Right. I think during the scene when you were filming that, you were talking about how Sid may have been able to beat the case. Okay. And that his lawyers thought that had he lived, his lawyers thought that he would have possibly beaten that case. And that's a part of the story that nobody talks about.
Oh, man.
That there really wasn't enough evidence to convict him, right?
Well, I mean, he actually confessed, not only to the cops, but to a friend of his as well. That it was actually an accident.
That's
it was
true.
actually an accident.
Holy
Right, but
I'm sure the lawyer thought he had a case.
Yeah.
I mean, he was charging a pretty penny for that too. So, but I know that lawyer had a detective investigate, and I spoke to the son of the detective who had passed away a few years ago. And the son of the detective told me the only thing I remembered his father telling him was the guy was guilty as sin.
Really? So guilty as sin. Wow.
That's a detective hired by the defense lawyer. That guy from Boston, I forget his name. I actually met him.
Wow.
And I actually met him, went to his office, and it was like, so why are you guys doing this? You guys like Sid Vicious? He was the guy who would spit on people, and stuff like that. That was his lawyer, man. Yeah.
Wow.
You know who I always saw killed? I thought it was the guy that went. What's the guy? The red guy.
Yeah. A lot of people think it was the Rockets red glare guy.
Yeah, I thought he did it.
Well,
Rockets right, the horseshoe ball, and I thought he did it because he owed money.
Yeah, exactly. Rockets took the money, but I don't think he did it. His friends who actually knew him don't think he did it. I really think he just showed up there, saw the scenario, saw the money, took the money, and left. And I think he was the guy who placed the call, the outside call,
right,
to the front desk saying there's trouble in room 100.
That something had happened. Yeah.
Yeah, just before Sid shows up from his methadone.
Wow. Now you have a new project, right? Where you're working on some live footage of Sid.
Yeah, after Sad Vacation came out, we had this Japanese dude came up to us and went like, "Yo, I got a few minutes of Sid live at Max's," and we were like, "What the fuck are you talking about? That doesn't exist." He said, "Well, it does exist because I shot it and I have it, and I'm gonna send it to you." And when he sent it to us, we were like floored, like, what?
Yeah.
What? It's like the holy grail of punk rock. If you
definitely, there's, I mean, any kind of unseen footage of Sid Vicious is a big deal
because
we've seen, it's all unseen footage. Yeah,
shit.
Yeah.
It's unseen, and I'm telling you, the band sounds amazing. I mean, Jerry, Arthur, and Steve Dior are really cooking.
Yeah.
Sid is great. He's really doing it, man. And you go like, what? That really dismantles all this talk about Sid being useless. The fucking guy is great, man. He's really doing it, man. And the band sounds great.
Yeah,
I mean, you guys will.
I'm not surprised really, because I told you about my friendship with Rick Rivets, right? And he told me he saw Sid and he said he was great. He said he was
Right,
great
right.
at Max's.
Well, I
So
mean,
say
they played a bunch of times, so maybe some of the shows were a bit iffy, and the rest were great shows. And depending which show you saw, it was great. It was, you know, because they did play a string of shows, you know.
yeah, he did a bunch of them. Yeah, I mean, I remember buying like the Sid Sings record,
Yeah,
Sid's My Way record, and the sound quality was so, but you could tell he had something going on. It was pretty good.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, he was a great front man, you know. He wasn't a
Yeah,
great bass player, but he
no,
could have.
no, that he wasn't.
He could have become a great frontman. He was a great frontman, and the image was, you know, the whole show basically.
Well, I mean, he was the image of punk rock for 1979.
Yep.
Really that generation, especially the British scene, pretty much. He was the image.
Yep. Yep.
Wow.
For sure.
Another film you did, and I think when I heard you were doing this, I was really excited, and that's the documentary on Stiv Bators. The one called No Compromise, No Regrets.
Yeah.
Stiv is one of my all-time favorites. I got to meet him a couple of times. He was the nicest guy in the world. I was a fan of Lords of the New Church, of course, the Dead Boys, obviously, and his solo stuff I listen to this day. I probably don't go a week without hearing a Stiv Bators song. And
Nice.
when I heard you were doing that, I was like, about time somebody talks about Stiv. Because Stiv is like so important to the whole thing. Not just the New York scene, but even just in the 80s with Lords of the New Church. They were a great band.
Yeah.
Did you ever get to see them at all or no?
I saw them once in '88. I met Stiv. I met the band actually. I was about 17 when I met him, and it was like you said, he was like the sweetest rock,
nicest guy in the world. I had
person.
him, I'll tell you quick. I had met him in the beginning of 1988 at the Ritz in New York City. That was like the first time I ever really had a conversation with him. And this was a show that Joey Ramone was putting on called Circus of the Perverse. And it was a variety of different acts. Michael Monroe was there from Hanoi. Lemmy from Motorhead was there. Ronnie Spector was there. A bunch of people. And Stiv it was just after, I think it was right after Lords of the New Church broke up. I think it was about that time. And I was talking to him for like 20 minutes. He actually just sat down and we talked about music and everything. And I was asking him, what's he going to do? We had things lined up. And he actually took 20 minutes to talk to me, in the crowd. It was incredible. He was like that,
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I was very surprised when I met him because I saw the show and I was like, whoa, this guy's fucking crazy.
Yeah, he was crazy. I mean,
you had
some great footage there you had some great footage there of the Dead Boys of Stiv crawling into the bass drum. That's famous.
Yeah. We were very lucky because we had like a zero budget to make that movie, and a bunch of Stiv's friends came through and gave us footage and music and photography, and that's how we really compiled everything and put the movie together, because
is there any particular reason is there any particular reason why Cheetah wasn't involved too much? I mean, is it something you could talk about? I noticed he was kind of not.
we did an interview with him. He didn't send the release form, the signed release form. We tried to do another interview with him because we weren't very happy with the quality of the first one, and it never happened. It never happened. There was no explanation for it. Really.
I mean, the book that he wrote about 10 years ago was I mean, I read it like 3 times. It was like the Bible on the Dead Boys, you know, because really there's such little information about them. You know, there's his book, there's your documentary, there's, you know, whatever live footage you can scrounge up, but there isn't a lot. And when you did the documentary, I was like, right on, you know, about time something was out there on the record for those guys.
Yeah, I mean, luckily we had Jimmy Zero and
yes,
Frank
he was
Sesame.
fantastic. Yeah,
Jimmy was amazing. You know, it's so funny that. So at least we had somebody to tell us the story. You know, the insights,
and
which was
so
cool.
much.
You know?
Yeah, so much about the early years too of Stiv's career in that movie is fantastic. You know, the Frankenstein stuff and before the Dead Boys.
I know, it's beautiful. The footage that the Killer brothers gave us. These 2 brothers that were friends with Steve and Frank and the whole, you know, Cleveland crew, and sat on this footage for what, 40 something years, you know.
Yeah. Wow.
And they just gave us everything for free, you know, like use anything you want. And we're like, wow. That was real gut thing, you know. I mean, fuck me, man, that's priceless stuff. Also, you know, the backstage at CBGBs where they're just hanging out. I mean, there's great stuff, man, in that film.
Yeah, yeah. And Cynthia Ross did a great job talking about her time with Stiv as well.
Yeah, Cynthia was one of the people that got me to do this, you know, because for a couple of years, wherever I went, always somebody would ask me, when are you making a Steve Bators documentary? I don't know. I don't think that's going to happen, you know, because who's going to fucking pay for it? You know?
Yeah.
That was the question. You know? So, I mean, it was just kind of magic how everything happened, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it was a totally grassroots effort. I remember when you were asking for funds, people donations and everything, and people were giving. That was great. I was glad to see that.
Yeah, but you know, every time we've done a crowdfunding campaign since Looking for Johnny, it's been less and less and less. So I don't know. Maybe it's not. Maybe crowdfunding is not, you know, trending anymore.
Well, yeah. Right now, the world's all fucked up, so it'd be hard to make a movie if you didn't have the money for it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right, so I wanted to ask you about 2 films that I had to look up. I wasn't familiar with them. It was 2 films that you wrote the screenplay on. A film called Bounty Killer and a film called 6 Bullets to Hell. Both of them were around 2016, 2018 or so, right? Can you tell us a little bit about those movies?
Well, that's just some spaghetti westerns we've been shooting in Spain, basically. A bunch of friends. And it's just a lot of fun, you know.
Yeah.
Getting a bunch of friends to dress funny clothes from the 19th century, have them hop on horses and shoot guns and stuff. Yeah, it's just a lot of fun, basically.
Sure. Now, one name that always pops up with your films is Chip Baker, mostly as producer. How did you get involved with Chip?
Well, basically, Chip Baker is it's a pseudonym that we use. Basically, it's just a couple of us doing all the work, and it's a pseudonym that we use.
So there is no Chip Baker. It's all you together.
Yeah.
Gotcha. You got me there. I thought it was a real person.
That's the idea, basically.
Yeah.
That's just It's a trick from Jess Franco's book. Jess Franco was this, sort of Roger Corman Spanish director from the 70s, and him and his friend Antonio Mayans, this actor that we worked with in this spaghetti western, actually, they used to do a bunch of movies together, and just the two of them with a couple more actors, and then they would have to make up all these, names, for the end credits, so it would look like there was a bunch of people involved when it was really just 2, 3, 4 people. You know what I mean? So that's where we got that idea from, basically.
Okay, that's great. I want to ask you about the rise and fall of the Clash, your first film, that came out in 2012. Now, the majority of that movie deals with the breakup of the band, which I thought was a interesting angle. Instead of telling kind of the whole history of the band, what made you concentrate on the end? Is it just the controversy, or what made you?
So, not really. I mean, Don Letts had done the perfect Clash documentary, so I couldn't go to day one and start and do the same thing Letts did before. So basically, my idea was to focus on the last 2 years when they fired Mick Jones, etc.
Right.
But to understand who Bernie Rhodes is and what he did, the manager of Clash, to understand that figure, you have to go back a little bit. And that's why we started in Sandinista, basically, after, an intro of who's who and this and that. The movie really starts in 81, which is when Bernie Rhodes is reinstated as the band's manager.
Yeah. Okay. But let me ask your opinion. Musically, after Sandinista, how do you feel about the Clash?
Well, I love combat rock. I love Sandinista combat rock. But Cut the Crap is definitely one of the worst albums ever.
Totally. That's why I had to ask you, because that's such a piece of shit.
Yeah, exactly. But that's also why I made the movie, because it was such a mystery how this beautiful band that made this beautiful music suddenly became this piece of shit, And I actually interviewed Paul Simonon in 1990. And he told me he wasn't involved. He was painting in New York while Joe was making the album in Munich, and that it was just like all set up, and he didn't have anything to do with it. So I was just puzzled, by his response, and just how shitty it all was, that ending, So I was always puzzled, and I just wanted to investigate more. And once I saw that Vince White had put out a book telling, a tell-all book about those last 2 years without making the band. Vince was one of these guitarists that replaced making the band.
Right.
And the book is amazing, man. I was like, wow, this is just unreal. And I just thought, look, I've been a fan of the Clash since I was a little kid, So if I didn't know all this shit that's in this book, I'm sure a lot of fans know. So that was, the impetus really to start this.
Wow. Now I have to tell you, the Clash is the first band I ever saw in concert. Okay, I saw them at the Shea Stadium show in New York, opening for the Who.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, that was one of the first shows I ever saw, and I still remember it. And I guess it was about maybe 10, 12 years ago they came out with the live album of that. So it's great. Yeah. I mean, they were great live, okay, but those last, Cut the Crap, it was like, to me, Strummer needed to have Mick Jones with him. Otherwise, the writing wasn't there,
Well, Mick and Topper were the musicians in the band.
Yeah.
Once you fire the musicians in the band, all you have is the image. You got the image and you got the words, but you got no music, and that's what happens in Cut the Crap. Precisely.
That's true.
You got shit music, you got some good lyrics, you got the image, you got some, a few decent lines here and there, but the music sucks, man.
To me, it's unlistenable. I never listen to that stuff. It's terrible.
I don't blame you.
You want to ask me?
No, I'm pretty excited.
You're good.
I'm glad it's so you answered a lot of the questions.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, this is incredible.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about with you, Danny, me and Rob, we've done podcasts on. We did a show on The Clash last year. We've done shows on Johnny Thunders and the Sex Pistols and all that stuff. So, it's great to just get this added, stuff here that you're talking about. When you're working on the new documentary on Sid Vicious, are you going to come to New York at all? You got any plans to?
Well, I would love to. Yeah.
What's that?
I would love to, definitely.
Yeah, well, you got to meet up with us, man. We'd love to hang out with you.
Yeah, I'm up for it.
All right, cool.
For sure.
Cool. All right, so I want to thank Danny for coming on the show. I thank you very much for coming on. And if you have any more info or anything in a couple of months about the new thing, we'd be happy to have you on again. We're going to talk about your movies a lot coming up. We'll plug them for you, okay? And thanks a lot for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, man. Thank you for having me.
All right.
Thank you, brother. Peace, man.
Take care now.
Have a great day, sir.
See you
Thank you.
soon.
All right.
You too.